Hello and welcome to the Unapologetic with Janine McKinnon podcast. I'm your host, Janine, manifesting maven, lunar ritualist, nature lover, sex magic expert, and empowering confidence and sexuality coach. If you'd like, you can think of me as your witchy bestie who calls you out on your self-deprecating cycles while encouraging you to align with your highest self. And I'm on a mission to help women return to the wisdom of their bodies and embrace their inner power. If you're a woo-woo woman craving more self-love, confidence, fulfillment, and passion in your life, you are in the right place. The Unapologetic with Janine McKinnon podcast is here to help women like you to thrive as your most radiant and happy self. Here you can find inspiration and tools taken from my one-on-one coaching sessions and group experiences to support you in your journey. We'll cover things like societal conditioning, inner child healing, pleasure practices, manifestation techniques, approachable rituals, and all around women's empowerment. My goal is to shift your perspective and give you actionable takeaways so you can walk away from these episodes feeling inspired to create a life that ignites your soul. Thank you so much for being here. I am so grateful that we're able to connect in this way, and I can't wait to dig into the contents of this episode with you. Without further ado, let's get into it. So today I am popping on with something a little bit different. I just got off a recording with Melissa Denuzzo, who I co-facilitate women's circles here in Souk, and we always spend some time preparing for our circle, which is next Wednesday on June 26th. And this topic is anger and the intense emotions of motherhood. And it is just such an alive topic. And I really wanted to share it with you. I think we go into it in the recording, but I think so much of the work I do with clients is reconnecting women to their emotions and their body, because we have been taught to be the good girl, to shut up and smile and push down and repress anger, especially, as well as so many different emotions, and to just keep towing the line, doing the thing, being praised, appreciated, ticking the boxes, achieving the things, and it overrides our relationship with our emotions. And it is a relationship. We go into this more in the recording, and so I really wanted to share it with you, even if you're not local to Souk and aren't able to join the circle. It's just a really important conversation, and even though it's not going to be as in-depth as we will get into next week within our in-person space, my hopes is that it just kind of opens things up for you a little bit. Perhaps shifts your perspective or gets those wheels turning, and perhaps inspires you to have some conversations with some close friends. And of course, I'm always available as well if you want to shoot me a DM or an email and just say what is alive for you. Will also add, as this was a bit of an impromptu recording as we were talking about our circle space, I had unusual interruptions for my podcast. I'm normally very on top of making sure I have a quiet household. And if my kids are around, we have tools to have them quiet. So that is not popping up on the recording, but that was not the case today. So you will notice background noise with my kids coming in and out, and perhaps you're hearing them right now with the dog. But I think that's all a part of motherhood and just makes this particular conversation that much more real and alive and relatable. So I am not going to attempt to edit things out. I think it would be a challenge to do so anyway. But just giving you that preface that it is a little bit different than my normal conversations. You will hear different things going on. But without further ado, we will just hop right into the conversation all around anger and intense emotions in motherhood.
Thank you for meeting me and opening this topic with me. And we have our circle coming up next week, next Wednesday. It's I believe the 26th, right?
I believe so. Yeah. Yeah, it is Wednesday the 26th.
And we meet in person in the evening from 6 till 8. And our topic for this month is anger and these big emotions that we can feel in motherhood. And we're talking a little bit about it, opening it up, and how relevant it is throughout what I'm getting both of our motherhood journeys up until today, up until right now, of how we're navigating and living life inside of motherhood. And I was sharing that there's this thing that I've heard from a few women in the last week or two, that they're having this experience with anger where they're they're losing their shit. This is the exact words they're saying. Some form of I lost my shit, or I'm losing my shit, or I keep losing my shit. And it's this experience where they're getting really angry and losing, like, I get this sense of losing control. And after it's done, feeling this shame or this guilt or this remorse, and that's kind of heavy in their motherhood experience. And I think this is so alive for a lot of mamas. And I wonder if you want to share a little bit about your experience that you were telling me with that, and how that is for you now and how that has moved throughout your motherhood.
Yes, absolutely. So I feel like working with anger and these intense emotions, as a mother, within the relating space has kind of had these ebbs and flows, especially when zooming out in terms of the relating space wasn't as relevant. And then moving into motherhood, it really became so apparent. And I think when you are especially like right in there in the trenches, I had two kids under 2 years old. They're a year and a half apart. So it was just so depleting of so much of me. And I think that's what really ties into those intense emotions is we don't have the capacity to ground ourselves and manage our emotions and things like that. And so when we're just in the thick of it and we are giving and pouring out, everything is so much more raw and bubbling up and unleashes in a different way. And I remember so clearly, I can't remember exactly how old my kids were. I'm guessing maybe around 6 months and 2 years or maybe a bit before that. And it was just a low point of motherhood. And I know all of these different things were stacking on. I know I was like pushing hard with work, trying to get things going, and then the stresses of motherhood, whatever happened to be the circumstances in that particular moment. And whatever the trigger was, I remember being in the shower and my son coming in. And again, I can't remember what the specific thing was, but me, just as you said, losing my shit and just like yelling and screaming in the shower and just letting it out because I had no other way to do that. And I had to let this out in that moment and just screaming, and then him just screaming too. And it was so intense. And as you touched on in the beginning, like, of course, after that, there's the shame and the guilt and all of this regret for unleashing it in that way, which didn't feel like the best way in hindsight. And it was really tough navigating that, navigating all of the intense emotions that came through that period of motherhood. And then kind of touching on your question with kind of that journey, as I do feel like now through my growth, through the work I do, and the ages my kids are, because they are now almost 5 and 6.5. And I think that plays a very big role as well, a huge role. They're just not as needed, not as sensory overload in terms of the touching and the noise and all of these things. They are still quite loud, but it is different. And through my journey, I've been able to learn so many different tools to be able to really get in touch with my emotions, to learn from them, see what they are teaching me, and act on them before it gets to this like boiling over, really intense point. So I'd say that's kind of being what my journey is being like in the thick of it, feeling it, yelling it, expressing it, and then now learning to work with it. Um, yeah.
What I'm appreciating about your story right now is I'm noticing that it's part of the initiation into motherhood is getting there, getting to that point, because before you had those moments, like that moment in the shower or my own moments of like losing my cool and just freaking out. Before that, I didn't have a necessity to cultivate a relationship with my anger. And then after I had 2 toddlers and a baby and that was happening, I had a really big necessity to figure it out. Like, why is this happening? And what is going on in my emotional field? What is anger? How do I relate to it? What do I do with it? Why is it even there? And before being a mom, I didn't have the necessity to figure any of that out. I didn't have such a big necessity for like this emotional intelligence, emotional practices even so that I wasn't either suppressing it or hurting.
Mm,
Yeah, and with motherhood, it comes, right? This bigger capacity to feel and this bigger necessity of a relationship with your feelings, with your emotions.
absolutely. Oh, I love how you framed it as that initiation into motherhood and womanhood. Because it's true, and we touched on it a little bit in our conversation previously, is like beforehand, as you said, like there's not that necessity. It's a lot easier to repress things or avoid things and not be pushed to that edge. And then through that initiation, what came to mind as you were sharing is it's like that tower moment where everything is crumbling down because you are in the trenches, you are in the thick of it. And everything is so alive, so out there, and it's that initiation. Everything needs to crumble down. You need to be able to feel the intensity, to feel the emotion, to then be able to build upon them, to be able to learn from them and process them and relate with them in a different way. But it really is a necessity to be able to have kind of that crumbling down.
Yeah. Yeah, and in my journey after that crumble started to come, the shift toward anger is not bad. Anger is not violent. It is not innately dangerous. The suppression of anger and then the outburst of it may be, but anger that is present has been amazing in my life. When I can be present and feel my anger and use it to say no or to declare something or create a boundary or even declare my love or my partner or my family, like it's there for creation. It is there and it comes with a certain kind of intelligence to be able to move life, to be able to change things, to be able to create things, to be able to stay in a sort of aliveness in day-to-day life.
Mhm. Ah, I love this, and I love that we're having this conversation. Because I feel like through your transmission is like anger can come with this intelligence, like you said, and this passion. It's not necessarily this bad, dangerous, violent thing. And tapping into kind of the societal conditioning is that I think it's very common as women to have experienced and feel that anger is violent and scary and something to be avoided. And so we've stuffed it down. We express ourselves in different ways. But when we learn to relate with anger in a healthy way, in a balanced way, to be able to get in touch with it, our emotions are just, like you said, beautiful, intelligent.
Yeah.
They're there for a reason. They are teaching us something. And again, as you said, like boundaries, being able to say no, that passion and that love for a partner It is there telling us something, and it is able to move through us to create that change, to create that boundary, whatever it happens to be. And there's so much beauty and magic from being able to, again, relate in a healthy way with this very like potent, passionate emotion.
Yeah, and it doesn't come like that.
No, I know. It's a process for sure.
Yeah, it's a process and even a relationship. Like for myself, my anger, I have a relationship with my anger. I relate to my anger. It's something I cultivate. It's something that with my attention or my curiosity, I feed it. I feed this space of developing a relationship with my anger and not just anger, but my other feelings, my sadness, my heartbreak, or my fear, which all of them came in pretty big after I became a mother, and with each birth got bigger and bigger. I really remember going through that last postpartum with Junie. The immensity of my emotional field was huge. I had never experienced such terror and such joy and such heartbreak all within the same few days.
Mm,
And it really is a relationship because the further I would get from that kind of postpartum and the more I would go into my normal way of being, the more it would just be suppressed.
mm,
And it's important in motherhood. I really think that women, when they go through this portal of becoming mama, they also get the responsibility for creating, yes, the physical family, creating the children, but also creating the culture within the family, creating the culture within the community. And all of this gets sourced by her anger or her joy or her fear that is saying, "No, don't send my kids to this school. This is not what I want in my family." Or, her sadness saying like, I want something to change. I want to do something different with everyone. So it's like it's almost like this gift and this burden that we get in motherhood, and it's a relationship. It's something that the more attention and the more um, almost like the more we feed it, the stronger the relating is to the emotion, and the more access that a mama can get to it to move her life, her family to move and not be crushed by it.
absolutely. Yeah, I really like how you frame it as that relating. And that's a conversation that's come up with a lot of clients recently. And when it comes to anger or any emotion, that itty bitty shitty committee that can be in our heads or anything, these are pieces of us. They're parts of us. And we can have a toxic relationship with these emotions. We can let it overtake us, take over control, and cause this chaos within our life. Or we can choose to come from, oh, sorry, kids running around in the background. Very fitting for this mama's face. Or we can choose to have a healthy relationship with our anger, with our other emotions, and come from a place of grounding and discernment and being able to feel and learn from these emotions. And I think that is the magic of being a woman is we are such intuitive beings. We are so emotional, and that can be looked at in some ways when it's that toxic relationship as being too much, too dramatic, this negative thing. And we can really learn to relate with it in this healthy way and have it be our superpower. Be able to have these emotions flow through us and teach us things and help us create.
Mm. Yeah, you often talk about cycles when I talk to you. Like this is something that I get the sense it's almost like a backbone, like something like a compass or an anchor for you. And when you're talking about this relationship and this access and this magic, will you say a few things about how it ties into the cycle for you, what you see about that?
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. And I like that you mentioned it as kind of a frame for me or a framework or backbone is the word you used. because it really is. And again, I think it ties into our womanhood, our innate way of operating within this world. And sorry, 1 second. I'm just going to let that out.
Good, it's real. So it-
Let's see if that works. And see, before I'd be like losing my shit and feeling all this emotion, but I've been able to relate with this in a different way. So going back to our cycle and our womanhood, and just like emotion, there's something that are going to happen to us no matter what. So we can choose to let it take over and do its thing, or we can choose to have a healthy relationship with it. When it comes to our cycles, it's something that's happening no matter what. We can choose to repress it or avoid it, again, much like emotion, or we can have this healthy relationship and be able to tap into the wisdom that comes from our cycles. And so, how it relates into this conversation of anger, especially an intense emotion, when we are in our luteal phase, so most often women think of our PMS time. And that is when just things get under our skin a little bit more. We're a little bit more quick to react. Anger, it can be more of a prominent emotion. And what this phase of our cycle is, it is what is showing us what is not working. Because most of these things that are really bothering us in this particular phase are things that have bothered us throughout the rest of our cycle. They do annoy, they're not working for us. But when it comes to our luteal phase, this is our womanly magic where it's like, this shit is not working and I'm feeling something about it.
Yeah.
And then when we're able to move into that menstrual phase of our cycle, that's our time to go inward and reflect on these things. And when we are able to have awareness of our cycle and how we move through each one, we can tap into these superpowers and take this time to reflect during our menstrual phase. Okay, what was going on there? Now I'm not in the emotion so much where it's taking over my thinking. And I can pause, and that was telling me something. What is it? What can I learn from that? What can I create from that? And that's how we can tap into that cycle. And of course, there's more to it with spring and the creation and things like that. But that's what really feels alive in terms of this particular topic.
Yeah, I can relate to that point in my cycle where I get this like burn it all down kind of experience on the inside.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's definitely from anger and then it goes into the bleed, which is like you called it inward and I call it like my time of death.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at our circle, the intention is to touch in on the personal level, like how does it go for mothers in their day to day? What is their journey with their anger and these intense emotions? And how have they grown or how has it gone in their experience? And then to open it up to these bigger topics about how most of us have been raised to be good girls and to suppress, especially our anger, that maybe, our sadness is okay. A little bit of joy, but not too much is okay. But anger for sure is taboo. Well, you're not a good girl. And then there's kind of, yeah, conditionings all around that and going into that a bit more.
Yeah.
And then for me, when I started my journey of getting to know my anger and starting to relate with it, I joined something called the Rage Club. Jorge was doing it, and my kids were jumping in with him and doing it, and they had no problem expressing rage. And I couldn't do it. I could not get access to being angry for no reason. I had so many layers of conditioning. And what really worked for me was activating my body. I would start chopping wood because it was the winter and I could rise my anger. And it was through like moving my body in these sorts of ways that this kind of intense heat that anger is, then I would get access to it. And so I'm hoping to bring a little bit of that to the circle as well, this kind of activation, this taste of what it can be like to feel angry not because you're reactive, but because you're human. You have access to it, and it's a resource for life, for being alive, and for creating.
Yeah. It's our humanness. It really is. And I love that you touched on moving it through the body, through chopping wood and things like that, because that is a way that we can really access it and not become stuck in it and to actually be able to move through it. So I'm really looking forward to the space within our circle. And I also wanted to note that it is our last circle before taking a break for summer. So it does have an extra special feel for me. It's this last opportunity before we have this pause to be able to connect in the deep, special way that I only receive within this space and this container. And so to be able to bring this particular topic, anger and intense emotions, again, you touched on it with the taboo. It's something we shy away from really going into the depths in our conversations. We might share and commiserate with our mom friends and different things, touching on things, but this is a space to really go deep with it and to be able to share what's alive for us, to be witnessed in that, and to be able to hear from other mamas to again, it's been a theme through our circles is to see that we really are not alone and to see that in the depth, in the intensity has
Mhm.
this extra special thing to it than that more commiserating surface level. And then to move through and have a space for practice to be able to tap into this and move it through our body, I think will be really incredible to do within sisterhood, within this circle and this space as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really been the point of healing, that like not being alone in those deeper levels. Like you said, it's not just commiserating, but instead being seen, being witnessed, and the relief that comes with that, being seen and being heard.
Absolutely. It's so connecting and we need that as community.
Yeah. And I love that there's some women that have been there for every single circle. There's a few women, and then there's always a few women that it's their first time, or, they've come a few times. And I appreciate that mix. Something about it works. It like gives access to that woman who knows this is her medicine. She goes every month, it feeds her. Or that mama who's like, I'm curious about this, and I want to go, and maybe it's good for this month, but I don't have a babysitter for next month, and that it's not a problem. There's a space for, yeah, for any mama that feels called.
Yeah, so I got this vision as you were saying this of this like soup, and there's the different
Mm,
like womanly flavor that each one of us brings into the space. And some have been there throughout it, it's their medicine, and they can access that depth right away in that conversation, that authenticity. And then for the newer ones that are kind of like, oh, what's going on in this space? And they're able to be held and supported from everyone else, and it helps them be able to kind of blend in this soup and be able to access these things in a different way compared to if it was all a new container and it takes a little bit more time. So it's really nice to have that mix of it and to bring in these different ways of being, these different lifestyles and phases of
mhm.
motherhood, and to be able to share in that.
Yeah, medicine in the stories, medicine in the connection, medicine in the soup pot.
Yes.
Cool. So it's gonna happen next Wednesday, and we briefly talked about traffic, that if any mamas are listening to this and planning on coming, that if you're not right in soup, that traffic can be a thing. So leave a little bit earlier. Yeah.
Yes, traffic is definitely a thing. So to give ample space and time, and my go-to is to put an audiobook on or a playlist and take advantage of that for your time as well. And when you give more space rather than feeling rushed. Although this is the circle and the space, if you're feeling rushed and amped up from that, we can move through that and bring that into the
Uh, Bring it
like
for sure. Cool. Awesome. Any last things before we close the space?
Um, I'm just really looking forward to this as always. Emotions are something I work through with so many clients and have private one-on-one conversations, which are really powerful. But I'm really looking forward to the magic of this group container, being able to talk about this in such a deep way and just really bring that. It's going to be magical. Looking forward to it. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Feel this like joy and sadness that it'll be the last one for a little bit. So yeah, showing up with that like extra love and appreciation for the space because it's definitely been like medicine and filling my cup for these last months since we started it.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah, but that's it for now. And we'll see you at the circle, hopefully.
Yes, hope to see you there. You can always message either of us for the link, and we will try and include it in the post as well. Thank you for joining us inside the Unapologetic with Janine McKinnon podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you feel called, I would so appreciate it if you shared about this episode in your stories or left us a review to help us reach more women on their unapologetic journey. As a thank you for your support, you'll be entered into our monthly draw for a free coaching session. Just tag at Janine.McKinnon in your story shares, or leave the rating or review, screenshot it, and email to Janine@unapologeticmotherhood.com to be entered. One lucky winner is selected every month for a focused coaching session to support you in working towards your current desires. Until next time, trust your inner wisdom and create some magic.